If I could ask you first to stand and have a moment of remembrance for 9/11, 22 years ago. Thank you very much. You join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome all of you to our work session for 9/11. Our chair comments, the board met in executive session on 8/21 and 8/29 reference personnel. We'll also be meeting after this meeting to discuss personnel. First real item we have is Environmental Advisory Commission interviews. And I guess we'll start with Kathleen Davis. That's fine.
Yeah. I could stay there, but it's easier to talk to you all here.
If you could briefly just state, why you wanted to be on the EAC and what you feel you can bring to it.
Okay. Well, I'm extremely excited about this. As I said in my application, care for the environment has just been lifelong for me. It's been what I'm most engaged with, and all my life I did what I could. So I really look forward to retirement because not because I wanted to lay back and retire, but because I've always intended to devote my retirement to environmental work issues somehow. Leading up to retirement, I started taking courses, I started educating myself kind of on the ground, both about the science stuff, because I didn't spend my career in science, and also about how you make things work for ecology in a practical way. So I took courses with Philadelphia Horticultural Society, becoming a tree tender. So I planted lots of trees in the township. I can always talk more about any of these things. Took courses with Morris Alvarito, with the Penn State Extension, which gives lots of courses in every area. And then took the Master Watershed Steward course with Penn State and became a Master Watershed Steward, which it's a 3-month course. It covers every element of the watershed from the first raindrop down to how it gets back in the ocean, the problem with agricultural runoff, streams, riparian buffers, and then it also includes tons of volunteer hours. So that's what I've been doing. And now I am retired. I've been retired for 3 years. Unfortunately, and not on purpose, retired in 2020. What I learned, the big takeaways for me from both this physical work and engaged work, but also the learning about the scientific end of it, is that it has to happen on the ground. If you want to conserve and protect and properly manage your environmental resources, it's literally on the ground. And so you have to not only do the work of digging and planting, but you have to engage with the people on the ground, including everything in your ordinance is just what I care about. There are 2 things that I would like to personally that I think would be great for this, would be working on grant writing. You can do so much more. The grant money is out there. And there are so many people willing to help. Anything from Bucks County Conservancy to Penn State. I've also done a ton of work. I left this out with the Heritage Conservancy. And they, all these people know how to get grants. Also, local EACs have been getting grants. They've been happy to work with us. And I have had experience in grant writing myself. I was a professor and a director of graduate studies, and we need to get grants. Everybody needs to get grants. So I don't want to say I am going to bring in grant money, but I know how to work with other people to gets things like that going. And I think it would be great for New Britain Township. I think the people would love it. They don't want to just be throwing out their tax money all the time, but not throwing it out, giving, but people really, really get engaged when they know that money has come. And then that's the other thing I would like is community outreach. Every yard counts, every kid who knows about the storm sewer system and the problems with it. All of this counts. So community outreach, I think, is the only way. Yeah, you have to get everybody involved.
Okay.
So I think
Any questions from the board?
I think she covered quite a lot of the questions I had.
I'm just asking.
Yep.
I don't have any questions. I've planted trees with Kathleen.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. Oh, that's another thing. All the New Britain things like Marshall Circle and Circle Ave and Veterans Park and North Avenue Club.
So you've already been working for the township.
I've been working for the township. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Diane Rosencrantz.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing today?
Hi.
Thanks.
Good.
My name is Diane Rosencrantz, obviously. I have lived generally in or within New Britain Township my entire life, Chalfont Borough, which is why I said generally. So I lived in Chalfont Borough. I started there. My parents moved when I was 5 years old. I lived there till I was 21, moved to Beverly County for 6 years. I now live in Lyme, Lexington, in a house that my husband's grandfather built. So I love this area. It is my home. I pretty much say I've lived here my whole life. I moved out of my parents' house and found an apartment in Hatfield Township, so that's why I was out. My career has been in land conservation. I went to school a little bit older. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, so I went to school to Temple University for landscape architecture. I actually just let my landscape architect certificate lapse this year because I never use it. So if that was on my resume, it needs to go. This year is the year I decided not to renew it. However, I have worked in land conservation, both at Natural Lands and Delaware Highlands Conservancy. Natural Lands, when I was there, it was called Natural Lands Trust. I was there for 19 years. I started there as a planning assistant and had done work from that to managing and starting their GIS, Geographic Information Systems. And then I moved up to do land transactions, including fee simple transactions, owning land, as well as conservation easements. I was there for 19 years, and then I also worked while I was there doing things such as actually I also actually worked with New Britain Borough when they did their Walnut Quinlan Preserve plan. So their stewardship plan or land management plan is what we worked on with them as well. So I had done a lot of our land management plans, reserve management plans when I was at Natural Lands Trust and worked on a whole bunch of things for them doing that, working with townships, primarily in Chester County. Schuylkill Township was a township that I worked with. I was their open space advisor there. I worked with them to help conserve their land for conservation easements, as well as teaching people how to change things such as lawns to meadows, or how and where to put a trail so that it is sustainable, and how to manage where the signage and everything like that goes to keep people interested and engaged. 7 years ago, so actually September 1st of 2016. Yes, sorry, my brain. What year is it? I became the executive director of Delaware Highlands Conservancy. So I've been serving there for 7 years now. I still live in New Britain Township. My children, one just graduated, and one is a junior at North Penn. So Lyme, Lexington, I'm the part that goes to North Penn School District. So wasn't going to move my family out of the area. So I commute. I am typically up there Tuesdays and come home on Thursdays. So I stay up there. So I'm only here part-time. So part of my question or concern when we move to that is if I am accepted onto the EAC, is when would the meetings be, to make sure that I am available for it. So that is one of my questions that I have. Of course, that's probably not determined yet. So at Delaware Highlands Conservancy, thank you for mentioning grants. Grants are very key and important everywhere. I've done a lot of grant writing, community engagement. We have a lot of outreach events from our communications, land conservation. We primarily do conservation easements at Delaware Highlands Conservancy. We own a reserve. It's 144 acres, called the Van Scott Nature Reserve. If you're ever up there, it's in Beach Lake. You should check it out. It's pretty awesome. So we try to, what we call is conservation education, what we do, trying to teach people how to manage land, engage with land, learn about wildlife habitat, etc., instead of environmental education, because we are a conservation organization. I don't know if there's any other questions you have, or if I've covered enough of what I do.
Any questions from?
I apologize for one thing I forgot to do before the meeting started.
Yeah.
You said you're up there Tuesdays through Thursdays?
Correct.
Okay.
I'd be interested in seeing how you look at the overall picture, not just New Britain Township, but how green space flows from one township borough and stuff to, and how do you work all together? So that would be very interesting.
Thank you very much for saying that, because that connectivity is extremely important. Sustainability, the way that the world works together, is very key and important. So when I was at Natural Lands, I worked in many different groups from New Jersey up to the Poconos area, which is where I work and how I became familiar with Delaware Highlands Conservancy. Really looking to see how we can connect greenways together, how everyone can work together. I work with a lot of groups, a lot of land trusts and conservancies, schools, etc., to determine where's the best place, to protect, how can we protect it, and who is the best entity to do so? Because we can't all just do it by ourselves. It is very interconnected. It is the most important. Wildlife corridors are a huge thing for me. It's probably why I actually began my life in conservation, looking at wildlife and corridors, and really creating those spaces for people is really key.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
No, thanks for taking the time to come out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Next, we have Carol Weston Young.
I wish I had gone first. I have lived in New Britain Township for over 30 years. I married a Chalfont guy in college, and I came all the way from Abington to here. So I came to Lake Galena before it was Lake Galena for horseback riding and things in that valley. And there's Lost Acres for camp. So it's a near and dear area in my heart. I've spent, let's see, I retired a few years ago, became a master gardener, master well owner, master watershed, served 6 years on the board of Peace Valley Nature Center, Friends of, and grew up a Girl Scout. Always spent my time outside, always planting, also a tree tender. Have been active for the last 5 years, planting trees and working around New Britain Township and other townships. I too work with Heritage Conservancy. I work with BCNR. So if you have any questions for me, I've taken lots of classes through Penn State for forestry and sustainability, farming. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy. All of them.
Could you expand on what's a master well owner?
Master Well Owner is a course that you can take through Penn State online, and it teaches you all about your septic. And I happen to be a well owner here in New Britain Township, and I'm also find myself in the watershed zoning. I started out not watershed, but a few years ago, we looked it up and realized they changed us again. My zoning went from rural to residential to watershed. So we changed 3 times in 30 years. And I thought this is something that's really interesting. And the gentleman from Penn State who was teaching at that time was fascinating. And I thought this is something I can do. It was the pandemic. We were all looking for things to keep our brains busy. And that was kind of mine. And it's interesting. It's very interesting. With my husband growing up in Chalfont, myself growing up in Abington, we of course had sewers. In fact, his father was on the sewer board at the time when that plant went in. But I think there are some issues with our sewage, and we need to be thinking ahead. So I thought this was a good question.
Terrific, thank you.
Any other questions? And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yep, I think we can excuse them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at this point, yes.
Yeah, you're.
You're welcome to stay, but you can leave if you so desire.
Unfortunately, I have to.
Yeah.
Not a
Thank
problem.
you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, presentation item would be our 2024 5-year capital plan. Turned over to Mike / John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna let John take over with a little presentation, but I just want to say thank you to the Capital Planning Committee for all their hard work, as well as staff for putting in the time to go over this stuff and try and continue the process of continuing to look for New Britain Township's future and continue to plan for that. So thank you very much to all those involved.
All yours, John.
Thanks, Mike. So just to give everyone a quick update, the preliminary capital plan was given to the board on Wednesday. As you recall, we implemented this whole revamped capital plan last year, so a lot of the heavy lifting was done in terms of building our inventory list. And basically what the committee has done has met both individually with department heads and as a group, and it's basically gone very well to update the list for each year going forward. Just to remind everyone, our township, based on the policy, is defining the capital expense as anything having a lifespan over 1 year and a cost of $5,000. So what we do then with the capital inventory is break that down into 3 categories: staff, maintenance, and capital. And based on those categories, we've assigned a priority list based on a high, medium, low, and low range. We've included a couple more items this year, so our total inventory list is 211 items, and of those 211 items, we then take those high priority items only and then plug into the capital plan to then go through and include those in our budget. The funds that we use, we have a couple different, so obviously you're aware of the Parks and Rec Capital Fund. We have our capital improvement and equipment, Public Works for debt service, our road machine, and even though it's not a true fund, we use the American Rescue Plan or ARPA funds to supplement some of these items. So just this year, so basically we're looking at a slight increase. It's pretty average across the board for the next 3 years. We're looking right around, including debt service, we're looking right around approximately $2 million each year, 24 through 26, with a falling off as we get into 27 and 28, just based on the timing of the items now and where departments thought they would fit. Just to give an example of some of the 2024 items that are on board. One of the suggestions for the committee, before we were including 1 project per year, and the committee felt that it was more beneficial to maybe include some planning phases instead of just the entire project in 1 year. So in 2024, after a meeting last week, a couple of park and rec items we designated as planning phases in 2024, mainly the pickleball court that's been talked about, as well as the planning phase for the replacement of the tot lot and swing set in the front of North Branch Park. Obviously, there's other items that are on the list. I'd be happy to provide that full list. Again, you have the high priority items, if anyone wanted to see the giant list of everything that everyone's come up with, regardless of priority, I can provide it as well. As far as administration items, the bigger items include the roof and gutter. If you've been in the office, you can see why these things are a pressing need for when we establish this budget. And then the typical vehicles are very prevalent in 2024. We have a couple public work pieces, police officer automobiles as well. And one of the bigger projects that's been discussed is the fuel dispensing and management system upgrade that Ryan has looked into, which would modernize the way we're recording and then in turn processing any fuel that we need reimbursed from the borough, fire, EMS, those types of things. It'll just be more easier to keep track based on the older format that we're doing it in right now. So after the board has a chance to fully look at that plan, we're asking for a consideration before our budget process really dives into the details. The board should consider this motion at the next business meeting. And in the meantime, just to grab on the budget process for 2024 as well. Department heads have been getting, as of the end of last week, have been providing all their requests, and this motion to approve these items would then greatly assist staff in continuing to build out those budget items, which are not considered operating expenses. Because as you know, this is just strictly a planning document. We then, in tandem with the budget, will include those items for the board to adopt that budget for 2024. I think that's it. If anyone has any questions or of anything maybe in the coming years that I didn't cover, please let me.
Has there been anything significant, any projects that you've found that's come to light in the last year, since last year was our first year doing a capital plan, that's come to light that we needed to add to these capital plans?
I feel like the meetings have done well to do that, and now we've been bringing in different individuals, I think including Bill May on the Park and Rec Board provided a lot of insight. We pulled him in, even though he wasn't physically on the capital committee plan, to bring him in and then see what types of projects are necessary more immediately going forward, and then just sitting down and be like, okay, well, even though if these are things spread out over the next couple of years, I think that implementation of the planning phase, excuse me, will really help out, because then it'll give us a greater sense to even narrow down further what those costs will be going forward.
I noticed there are a couple of things listed on the American Rescue Plan that I think we already did this year, i.e. the administration office furniture, the common area furniture, and small conference room.
Those are listed as police department items.
No, they're listed as administration office furniture.
Yeah, but for the police department,
Oh, I'm sorry.
the 5 offices downstairs. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Excuse me, I'm dead.
That's all right. I did the same thing when I looked at it very quickly when we were in the meeting, so. The one big thing, thank you very much, John, for your presentation. He made a very good point. You know, Bill May was included in this process, and you'll see there's actually, it's broken down into 2 parts. Half of the project is coming from the Park and Rec Fund. The other one's coming from the ARPA funds, and that is the update of design and repaving the entire trail system in North Branch Park, which comes out of, I guess, an inspection done this year, a resource inspection done earlier this year. Walking the trails, seeing what needed to be done to improve the user experience in North Branch Park. So that's a pretty substantial project, you know, but it was, you know, the funds were split over 2 funds to help take care of that. So.
Questions?
No, I just comment that when Greg and I met with the committee last month or so, we emphasized the need to fix the problems with this building as a priority. And I feel strongly about that. There's no sense putting new furniture in a building where we've got damp issues and mold issues and other problems, creating unhealthy environment for our employees.
Question?
Thank you.
Greg, nothing else?
Nope, nothing else. No.
Thank you very much, John,
Yep,
for your
you got it.
presentation. We will look it over diligently and come back on the 25th.
And then that'll just as one final point, if we get to that point, this is that adoption date was right in line with where we were last year. The adoption date would greatly impact being able to then really narrow down the funding dollars as what we're gonna use for our year-end balance, because now that I'm starting to get in. Or everyone's basically provided their. Data sheets with what they expect to expend, expense versus not expense, so those dollars are gonna go, so if we know where we're sitting at the end of the month, then it'll be easier to. Make that budget process go smoother going forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess we are now up to the Gillen Regret Police Department Facility Assessment. Sir.
Thanks to you. Just as Matt gets set up to update the board, we met, Bill, John, Cynthia, Chief and I met with Matt last week to go over an initial presentation, which is what he'll be presenting to the board today. You know, there'll be a large number of things to discuss on here, but Matt did a very good job last week of walking us through all of that. And I think it would be beneficial for the board to see this and provide feedback on the floor plan renderings and things that Matt and Kim have created for the board.
Just a power button. Just a power button?
Yeah. Turn it back on.
Okay, great. I didn't want to.
Oh, did you see?
Yep.
Good.
Where is,
Hey, well, appreciate you having me in today to kind of run through where we're at currently in the feasibility study, looking at the federal facility as well as police space specifically. Just to kind of give a little bit of a summary of how we got to where we are today. We did sit down initially when we met with the township representatives, put together a project mission statement for the job. And then to develop some supported core values. So I just kind of wanted to highlight what we took away of what the overall mission was. In this case, the building will be emblematic of the values of New Britain Township, acting as a cornerstone of civic life in the community by creating a vibrant and elegant and welcoming facility that reflects the progressive ideals of the thinking nature of the residents that it serves. So that's the overall mission that we were set out to solve. In support of that, we put together some core values. I'll just highlight what they were. Welcoming and accessible was one. Comments that came back were, the appearance of this building from the street is not welcoming. There could be some improvements there. Accessibility is a little difficult to transgress in and out of the building with some of the exterior stairs and ramps and things like that. How do we go about solving? Professional and modern, so updating the overall appearance, just based off the age of the building, excuse me. Flexibility is always key, making sure that the building and the spaces have the adaptability to change over time to serve changing needs from the township. And then we want to be environmentally fiscally responsible with the decisions that we make. So that was sort of what we set out to do in initial conversations. As part of this, we put together, we did an entire building assessment report for the facility that you are in now. This is just a few highlights from that report. There's the full thing that's available. We provided that to the township earlier. But some of the takeaways, obviously the site location for this building is good. It works. I think site amenities and features are there to support your needs. The building size right now is inadequate, particularly on the police side. And we ran through all the programming to get the chief sort of up to where he needs to be from a best practices standpoint. We were at a deficit of square footage. So I think in any case, we need to find some additional space to get the police to work and function at their highest and best use. Building age and life cycle. It's a bit of a mixed condition overall with this building. I think there are some positives. You guys have made some reinvestment into it, particularly mechanical systems recently, roofing and things like that. So we want to be mindful of that to not sort of waste the investment that's been put in. But then to try to solve some of the other problems that you are experiencing, I think they just came up in terms of moisture infiltration, mold. How can we kind of solve that as part of this overall program that we would put together? So we identified those as well. Accessibility requirements, once we begin to kind of touch the existing building here, a lot of it is not up to current compliance, so we'll need to kind of raise the standard there from public facilities, restrooms, things of that nature. So that was a takeaway there. Interior renovation, some investment has been made over to the administrative spaces recently, and they're in pretty good shape. I'd say that the police space in particular is probably overdue for major improvements and sort of interior renovations and cleanups there. And then building expansion, again, we talked about the deficit of space for the police needs, so we are looking at adding some space to the overall building to meet everybody's needs. Just have a few shots of the exterior to kind of talk about some of the conditions. The main public entry, this was a point of discussion right now that, it's not very friendly and outward facing as it addresses the community. There's some challenges there. There's a lot of exterior steps. There's a lot of ramps. You can see that you've put a lot of work and time into constantly repairing those things as they're outside concrete elements. So maintaining that is a bit of a challenge and an issue. We talked about the police entry. As it sits right now, it's fairly well hidden. It's very contained. You don't really know it's there unless you need to know it's there. It doesn't really present itself to the public. So was there a better way of kind of solving that and addressing that feature and function? Talked about just the rear facade. I know there was some infiltration issues and things of that nature. And when we're looking here at where the current public meeting room is, obviously this is sort of the adapted old schoolhouse building, which has some challenges for adaptive reuse, but I think we've been able to kind of solve those. Here is this is the existing site plan. This is as everything is right now. The current building is about 6,500 square feet per floor. So you can kind of see how it sits there. There's a dedicated police yard. We think the site layout overall, works pretty well. There's just some accessibility issues and things like that into the building that we think can be improved as part of this process. I have a couple existing plans here. I'll just skip by these to kind of jump in, but that's the upper and lower levels if we need to cover anything. So what we have here is sort of the proposed plan for. So we're looking to adapt and reuse most of the existing building. We're not looking to demolish anything. We are looking to do 3 smaller additions, one located here, one located at the front, and one located at the rear. I'll dive into the details there, but are looking to kind of expand space in 3 different areas in order to kind of reconcile all of the space deficiencies that we identified through conversations with township staff. So this is the lower level floor plan. We divided this into a couple different colors. I'll go through those. This lower level is currently where the police occupy, and that would be the proposed plan moving forward. The first addition that you see is this kind of darker blue area. That's new space, new to the building. What we would propose to do there is create a new entry for the building for both the admin and the police. Drop that down at grade at the height of the parking lot, and then remove all the exterior stairs and ramps. All that stuff would then be internal to the building. So you'd have a small ramp down to the police, you'd have stairs and an elevator up to the upper level. That would solve the issue of accessibility from a elevator code standpoint by adding that elevator in, and then creating a unified lobby for everything that addresses the street in a little more a delicate way than it does currently. So as far as the additional program, we have a training room outside that would be public space. That space where additional police forces come in, do group and joint training. All that is on the public side of the wall. All the blue areas on the public side of the wall, which creates a good public-private divide so that you are not bringing anybody from outside in the community back into the police unless they have dedicated business. In terms of that as well, we're adding an interview room and a toilet room. Some things that the toilet room is there, but the interview room is not an ideal situation right now. So we're solving that as well. That's a space that you come in, take victim statements, have a conversation with officers and such, and not go back into the private areas. The light blue areas that you see here is sort of the operational police areas. We're in the process of kind of vetting and making a few tweaks with the chief based on some feedback. But this is your office space, your areas for patrol, things of that nature. The rear, we added new space here to get the locker room facilities in for the space. As you may are probably familiar right now, There's a men's locker room down there. There's a makeshift temporary sort of female locker. This would solve that problem. This would give full locker room facilities to all genders down on the police level. So that would be an addition of space there. The other addition on this floor would be a new sally port. So building a new structure to house the sally port and some of the detention areas that are down there. And then inside would be sort of a complete renovation to move and slide spaces around to give the police the additional space they need in terms of meeting evidence storage and some of their office space, break space, and things of that nature. So I can always jump back if there's additional questions as we go into it. So on the upper floor, we're adding a couple spaces as well. So again, I noted the new entry here. So this would be an open to below. That's just new floor area down low. You come in and then you'll come up to a lobby. It's basically in the same general location that the lobby is located in now. But again, we've internalized all those stairs, added the elevator steps, things of that nature. We added, as part of this, we repurposed a little bit of the existing admin space to create a community conference room. So again, that would be for members of the public, developers, people like myself, when I would come in to meet with township staff. You would have a conference room outside the secure line so that I am not going back into any of the private office space. It creates a good public-private condition for people to meet with staff. So we added that on the front. And then we talked about some of the challenges of the room that we're in now. Obviously, from a technological standpoint, things are not ideal for everybody to be able to see and things like that. So in adding the sally port, we also took the opportunity to add a new public meeting room space, then repurpose the existing public meeting room space. So adding new public meeting room space, that'll give you the opportunity to sort of rebuild this in a way that kind of meets today's technology. We also talked about it from a safety and security standpoint. We're going to make some changes to this based off our conversation the other day, but we're going to reorient a little bit. It'll give you direct access into an executive conference room and things like that. So again, just solving some of the public-private issues that arise in these meeting places. We think that, by adding that space, since you're already adding it down low, it solves some other problems that you have. We would then look to repurpose the space that we're in into the executive conference room, toilet room facilities that would meet full accessibility and things of that nature. As part of that, we're adding space on the outside of the building, so it'll clean up the whole, existing facade. It'll address a lot of the moisture and infiltration issues that you're having along that outside wall by adding new exterior wall there, and it'll create sort of a more welcoming and public-facing appearance along Park Avenue there. The actual administrative space, we're making a few changes and moving a few walls, but we're mostly leaving that as is. It sort of meets the need. You guys have made an investment there in the past, so we don't see a need for heavy renovation there. There's probably a light touch and shifting some elements around. And then in the back, again, we added space down low for the police. What we're going to do on that back piece there, we're going to move administrative storage up and repurpose some of the investment in the storage technology that's been made downstairs. Bring that up so that it's divided. Admin and police are separate. Then you're not bringing people, into the two different spaces without clearances and all that kind of ideas. There's a little bit of growth space there available for additional offices. And then we added a wellness space on the back end. So that was a request from the chief and his staff to have that kind of space. Some fitness. We did locate it up on the admin level. Again, just based off of clearances, we viewed it as an amenity for all township staff and employees. So again, you're not getting people going down into the police space without clearance. That's why it's located up on that level. All in all, we're adding about 4,000 square feet to each floor, give or take a little more on the police level. So about 5,000 to 6,000 square feet in total additions, and then renovating the existing space as part of all this. So that's sort of the broad overview of where we're at the moment. Next steps for us are to have a few more detailed conversations to clean up some of the program inside the building and make sure that it meets everybody's needs. I'm going to make some adjustments here with the chief, and we already talked about some of the stuff we talked about with meeting storage needs and the public meeting room. So we'll make those adjustments. As part of that, after we get the plan set, we'll put together some 3D renderings to show what the outside of the building might look like with all these kind of new elements added to solve the overall programmatic need. And then when we have all that full information, we can give you some detailed cost information about what we think the total project cost might be at the end of the day. So those are our next steps here over the next coming months.
I have a question. I'm looking at your proposed plan and we're taking out the front, where are we putting parking?
So you don't actually lose any parking as a part of this. So you have that sort of, it's a bank farm condition here, so the hillside
Right.
is just unnaturally built up. We would be clearing that space out to pick up an addition. We're not losing any additional parking
Okay.
along the front side.
Okay,
The police will lose a little bit in their concealed lot to get some of the, to get the one addition there. But otherwise, you're gonna be neutral in your overall parking count.
okay.
We had asked you at our meeting last week if you could give us just a ballpark.
Sure thing. Yeah. So I certainly get. What we're seeing right now, I'll give, again, we want to get all the details, but I'll give you what we're seeing historically right now. We do a lot of public work, particularly in the state of Pennsylvania. We do a lot of this kind of work for municipal police. What we're seeing right now in terms of cost per square foot with prevailing wage jobs in the state, interior renovations are running somewhere between $250 to $300 a square foot based off of, based off the complexity, and that's where we'll need to zero in a little more. Addition and new buildings are running somewhere between 400 and 450 square feet. And that's pretty typical across the industry. That's what we're seeing right now. Sort of adding all this up, I'll give you a high-end range that I'd like the ability to kind of dive in and give a little more detail, but I think the overall outlay here, we'd be somewhere between 6 and 8 million in terms of construction costs at the end of the day. Utilizing some of those kind of base construction rates. Again, that's historical data from similar project types that we are seeing across the Commonwealth right now.
One question, do you see any problems with the outside materials at the moment?
I mean, they are not ideal, and we can talk about how long we want to do that. This is mostly an ephes building. It's exterior insulation. Put it in the 90s. That's when it was not a perfected system. That's why you're having some of the moisture issues that you're having. They're much better now, but particularly when this was installed, there were some issues. So I think what we would like to do is take the opportunity to either conceal it and sort of build in front of it wherever we can. If we want to go further than that, we can talk about that. Obviously, I know we want to be mindful of budget. There are alternatives available. There are things that we could look to do to kind of replace the whole envelope. We would just need to kind of put a line item on that and see if that's something that we want to completely address. As part of this, we wouldn't have to touch everything, but we might want to touch a lot of things. I would certainly recommend, as we're going through the renovation here, to update windows and things like that and make the building as energy as efficient as we possibly can. That would probably involve, bringing up insulation values and things like that on the overall to kind of increase the overall building performance and efficiency of everything. So the numbers I give are sort of inclusive of that. We can, as we go down that path, and we can sort of determine what is in and out and with you're comfortable spending, and then we can adjust the program to them.
If we were looking at building, just starting new, what's the possible range of cost?
Yeah, you're probably gonna be, right now what we're seeing, I would put it closer to $400 to $500 a square foot. And then there's some unknown there about what that would mean from a site perspective. So there'll be some adjustments that we'll need to make, but the site work should be limited. There'll be some updates from a stormwater perspective that we would need to make with the conservation district. If we go all new, that's a different conversation. That's a much bigger land development permitting process. So it's going to add a lot more site cost. Two things, assuming that we would redevelop here in some way, would we, and then the size of the building, would it just be police? Would it just be new? So there's some nuances within that, but somewhere I would put it 450 to 500 and then add in whatever the site work would be for that sort of unknown piece.
So based on what you've drawn here, if we were looking to build a police only building at a separate location, which conveniently enough, we have a square box pretty close to this building, you're suggesting that to have adequate space for the police department, they need an approximately 11,000 square foot building.
I think it'd need to be slightly bigger than that because we'd be divorcing them from some of the existing systems here.
Okay.
So if we did police solo, I would think that we would probably be somewhere around, let's call it 12.5.
Okay, but it could be a two-story building and be, and all the objectives could be accomplished
We could do it one or two. I mean, we could look at it.
based on the box that we have available. We could do probably a two-story there pretty easily.
Yeah, if we could get that to work, operationally, if the chief 2 stories works, kind of separating out operations. We've done them 2 stories in the past. We typically see them at 1. It's a little easier flow, but if we could resolve that, I'm sure we can with the chief. We have some other, usually we do sort of administrative offices up top and more of the functional kind of day-to-day down low. That would certainly be, an opportunity when there's, the outlet space, and then, we're capturing other investments in the building here that may be divorced from the police. So there's some nuances within it, but that would certainly be a possibility.
Okay, all right.
And one of the considerations that we had talked about at the previous meeting was that would we or would we not have to vacate the building to make this happen?
Yeah, I think for this instance and iteration, you would want to relocate. Definitely the police would want to relocate based off the complexity of this. You may be able to find a way to get the admin to continue to operate here, but I think that in the long run, it would be cheaper from a construction standpoint to relocate everybody out. The savings, I think, that you'd recoup on that as opposed to having to move would probably wash out at the end of the day. It really complicates things. It'll lengthen the construction timeline, which is certainly a cost factor, and then it creates additional issues with life safety and other factors that need to be accounted for.
So based on your experience, what's the timeline for a project like this to be accomplished in?
Sure. So when we get to the end of the study, we are ourselves, if we were to advance this particular concept, we would need somewhere around 8 months probably to create construction documents and run through the necessary approvals with planning commission, land development, things of that nature. So that would be about an 8-month window. For a build on this, I would look to probably peg it somewhere around 12 to 14 months in time.
So how do you relocate a police department for 12 to 14 months when we have no other administrative space anywhere within the township?
Sure, certainly a difficulty. I mean, we've done it in the past, found temporary space and things of that nature to do that. That's part of the conversation of kind of, finding space within the township that might work. Obviously, it's not ideal, but it's, if we want to repurpose.
I guess the question is how do you do that? Because that's a budgetary concern. Are we renting mobile units? Are we find vacant land? Are you talking reusing somebody's commercial building that's empty?
That's more.
All that's significantly expensive for at least a year's time of construction.
Agreed. That's typically how we've most commonly seen it done is sort of, available commercial space come out as a temporary fit for police to use that. Less so on the mobile units. I think we've been involved in a couple of that, but it's more, retail space within the community that gets repurposed for a time. So
what kind of upgrades need to be made to that space for it to meet basic operating procedures for a police department?
Sure. It's certainly part of the conversation. I think that, we can do things to make sure that certification maintained and things like that from a operational standpoint. Some consideration will need to be given, I think, in terms of how detention is done, whether that's not currently undertaken and that you use a county facility or something of that. I think that would be the larger problem. And then I think evidence security would be a large one. So you may need to make some adjustments within the space to make sure that the police can properly meet evidence protocols within. But I think from an office standpoint, office operating administration, you can reuse temporary office space without a heavy lift. Provided that the detention piece is kind of temporarily discontinued or run through the county or some other.
Right, but they still have to meet protocols for evidence, evidence handling.
Yep.
Intake of prisoner, interview, blah, 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 this and that. And there's, are we looking at another $1 million in soft costs just to get everybody out of this building so that we can then spend $6 to $8 to $9 million to redo it?
No, I don't think you'd be quite at $1 million, but there is a cost with it. I don't know what it is specifically. I think it would be under $1 million. To stay occupied though, I mean, there's legitimate factors there.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you are interested in a standalone solution, we're here to kind of partner. And that wasn't something that was on the table initially. So if that is something that we want to look at, we're happy to help facilitate that if you want to take a look at a different option or a different pathway. Again, just trying to solve the problems with the pieces that we have
Mhm.
available, so.
Okay,
Other questions?
Yeah, lots to
So
think
it's
about.
lots of
Yeah.
process, a lot to think about, and I
Absolutely.
think it makes it a lot more concrete for us to look at now, though, having us.
Absolutely. If there's additional questions or anything I can answer, just please send them on. Like I said, we're gonna do some things to kind of fine tune this and get it at its most optimal for everybody. And we would expect to kind of be at that process, end of that process probably within 90 days.
fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Break for a minute.
Oh, huh? You said we're taking a break for a minute?
What?
You said we're taking a break for a minute? I'm gonna go grab something, do that.
You can do the zoning stuff without me.
We did move on.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know.
I'm just gonna go grab something.
Only go on me and bring it.
Another donut? Yes.
Yeah, well,
Any particular? one?
See?
We take breaks.
It's
No
okay.
breaks.
I read somewhere, if food is free, eat more.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
Like a buffet or something.
Yes.
Yeah, and Ryan didn't believe me when I said we take intermission.
Are you like mine, Scott?
No.
Did I move? Am I in a different township?
No, I'm waiting for tonight, the Jets are, it's mine too. That was, I was.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to.
Next item is subdivision land development projects. I believe there is none at this time. Correct. Okay,
Thank you.
zoning hearing board applications, 209 Wilshire. Somebody, 209 Wilshire,
Zoning,
zoning,
On my docket of things to do this week, and I apologize for not being prepared for this meeting. I didn't know I was attending this meeting until I walked in the door at 9:56. But that's what I was reviewing this week, was on my things to do is to review the zoning applications before the ad goes out for the postings and mailings this week, so.
that's the same for 207 also? Okay, so no update there. Information items, departmental updates, administration. Okay, Greenway.
I just wanted to update the board. I did email last week to let you know, I wanted to thank Gilmore, Ryan Cressman, Chris Stanford, everybody that really helped get this together to make sure we're bidding this year. Without their help, I don't think we would have been able to achieve that. The first ad and when it will go live on Penbid is next week on 9/18. We are looking to have the bid opening on Thursday, 10/5 at 2 p.m. and then hopefully have this prepared and ready to go for an award at the second meeting in October on the 16th. That way we can finally put a bow on the Neshaminy Greenway Trail and move on to some of those other connectors that I know are on this township's priority list to get completed. So I just wanted to give that quick update and make sure everybody was aware of that, and that should be coming soon. And thank you to all involved.
Questions?
thank you.
Next one would be police. Since he's not here, there is no police at this point. Public Works, got anything?
Just that the 2023 road program is underway as we speak. I will update you once it is completed. The 2024 curb and sidewalk inspection has been completed by myself and Gilmore. The residents have been sent two notification letters advising them of the efficiencies that they have. And we have accepted the delivery of the new street sweeper. And that was put in service last Friday.
I think I saw it going down the street this morning, so.
Yes.
And I will make sure later today to get the board a copy of that second letter so that you can see what was sent to the residents. That way, in case you get contacted about that, you'll be able to be aware of what they sent. So I'll make sure that gets sent out after this meeting.
Have we had any feedback at this point?
I have not heard anything, Ryan. I mean, I did it in 2 phases.
Some of the feedback was good. The second time we went out, we had multiple residents come up to us, just to ask us what we were doing, explain what we were doing. They had no issues. There might have been one person that was not in favor of it, but so be it. But no, overall, it's been good.
What sort of percentage of repairs from all the work that you looked at? Was it around that 6 to 7% maybe that you were
Yeah,
anticipating?
The numbers that were given to you originally were pretty concrete.
Play on words here, thank you very much. Okay. Anything else from public
See,
works?
went right over his head when he said it.
I told him to say that.
Park and recreation? I guess the question here, rule for vendors and participants, reference to fall festival.
Was just to make sure that we had talked about when we send notification letters for everybody there. Making sure, as we've done with July 4th parade, to try and keep the event as apolitical as possible in a community event, just making sure we've sent out, some sort of code of conduct for everybody that's at the event to make sure everybody's on the same page. And, this is supposed to be community day. That's what we're pushing for as well as a fundraiser for the Veterans Committee. So just wanted to bring that up. I know the board's been mulling over a draft of that, and I'd like to have that sometime this week so we can make sure we have that ready to go. Just, I know Stephanie's been waiting for feedback. If anybody has any feedback, if they could by the end of today, just make sure they notify Stephanie of that, so we can get that in our hands tomorrow as a staff and start. Make sure we're ready to circulate that.
And would you circulate it to the contact person of all the vendors
Yeah.
before the actual event?
Yeah, that would, ideally, I would like to get that out either at the end of this week or very beginning of next week to make sure all participants get that, along with the details about if the event's canceled or anything like that, which we've done in the past. And I will bring up as part of this, Cynthia was talking about a little before, we are gonna do a one-time mailer for the fireworks and the fall festival this week. We're trying to get that out, Tiger printing, so we make sure, maybe people didn't read the newsletter, which the information was in, but send another one-time mailer out to try and really stir up wherewithal of both events.
Excitement,
Yes.
wonderment.
Wonderment. I like
Yes,
that.
wonderment. Will you be also, how is the Fall Fest going? Do we have plans already set and ready to go? How's the planning for that?
There are a few things that have popped up,
Mhm.
that we are working on ironing out, with got an email this weekend from the reenactors.
Mhm.
I was not aware, but they need a pit, so I'm trying to determine what size pit they need dug for their firewood, wood and sticks and the stuff that they're gonna be doing. Because I wasn't aware of that until Saturday, so, just some fine tuning things, but we have a number of vendors. We're organizing to get a lot of this stuff delivered. This year, we're gonna have a vendor doing food, so really from a public works standpoint, Ryan has 3, maybe 4 employees that we're gonna have here for the whole day for all the things, just because we have a number of moving parts like portable lights at night, things like that might need to be moved. That I just don't think we want volunteers having their own trucks or anything moving those things around, so. But overall, I would say the great thing is the way this is planned. It's a lot less staff involvement than it has been in the past. A lot of volunteers. We already have about 6 or 7 volunteers for the fall festival signed up. And we still have a couple more meetings with Tricentennial and veterans right before the event. So hopefully we'll stir up a few more to help with that stuff.
And any outside volunteers? I know with the new volunteer sign up form, has there been any?
There are, I would
participation?
have to ask specifically, Christine, but I do know there are a few that are outside of our committees that have volunteered.
Okay.
That are, that we started to add to that list.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
In terms of the rules, we're not looking to restrict anybody participating. It's just we are strictly talking about, no politicking and no electioneering, as it were. Just come and represent your cause, and that's it.
Correct, and I believe Stephanie has circulated a list of those, rules of code of conduct, as I'm calling it.
Right.
Well,
I
I think the important thing for our vendors to realize is it's a community event, and that's, they're welcome to be here to present their organization or their company, whether it's a political organization, a vendor or whatever. But it's a community event. We're not looking to, at least my opinion is, we're not looking to nitpick, specific things that anybody can or can't do. We want it to be a friendly, welcoming event for the community to come to.
just generally basic behavior issues. You have a booth, you're at the booth. You aren't going to be causing a kerfuffle anywhere, doing anything like that. And I don't want to turn it into a political event. It's never been a political event. There have been political parties there. But if people want to walk on past their booths, they're quite welcome to do so. No one should be shouting at them or doing, because it is a fun family event for the community, and that's its purpose. And that's the way it should stay.
Any other questions, reference that?
Are you joining us this year, Greg?
I will be in Brooklyn for 2 hockey games over a 6-hour period.
Ugh,
At the same time, a giant one bite pizza festival would be going on within 800 feet of where we're going. It's going to be a horrible day.
one bite. pizza.
Yeah.
Okay,
what's that mean?
whatever.
Dave Portnoy, yeah. It is, it's his thing.
We said that in Brooklyn.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we just happen to have 2 hockey games. Within,
luck.
yeah, within like a 16th of a mile. Huh, yeah.
All right. Finance,
I will just provide that John provided a quick update that, those expenses that aren't covered in the capital, plan. We have circulated those budget sheets to all department heads to cover those expenses that don't meet the definition of a capital expense, such as our utilities, things like that, to make sure we're tracking those and accurately anticipating any increases, decreases for the upcoming year as we move into the more intensely into the budget process starting this month.
Okay.
So, yeah, just wanted to keep everybody aware, and keep this all on all of our radars.
and board comments, Tricentennial Committee, thank you. I believe there was talk at our last meeting about awarding possibly tiles to our volunteers that were involved in the Tricentennial. We never did formally vote on it, but I guess to make it formal, we'll vote on whether that is something the board wants to do.
I believe I had proposed that the working members of the committee be given a tile as a thank you. And I can provide a list of names. I think it's about 5 people. And I believe it's a minimal cost to the township and a way to thank and continue to encourage people to volunteer for our events. So I make a motion that we award a free tile to the working members of the Tricentennial Committee, and that does not include myself, of course.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Can I?
Is this okay, Jeff, that we're doing it this way? Okay.
It's a, what I would call, it's not de minimis for the volunteers, but as far as the agenda, it's a de minimis matter.
Okay.
Any questions?
You were gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, I would like to make sure that we take maybe more than a brief blip on the agenda at our next meeting to thank those volunteers, perhaps by name. But for this purpose, I'm okay with moving forward.
Would you like to do some sort of in a sense, a participation resolution
That would be.
that we've
I
done
think
for
that
other
that-
people who
yeah.
have been on the boards and committees for a period of
This
time?
is
I
a big
think that would be
undertaking for
appropriate.
them. I think that would be appropriate.
Give them some resolution they can hang up in a closet somewhere, whatever the heart desires.
Well, maybe it would be nice to invite them to the next meeting, which would be just after
Right,
the thing, if they're upright and still walking.
I'll have had a day to.
Yes, they might have had a day of rest, but yeah, invite them to the next meeting and then we can give them to them at that time.
all right, so we have a motion and a second, no further questions?
Nope.
All in favor of approving, signify by saying aye.
Aye. I have a report comment to make, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hood,
So, I would like to make the board aware that as of Thursday of last week, Mr. Schmidt of the Chalfont New Britain Joint Sewer Authority has decided to retire. He will be retiring, I believe, he's retiring, but he's staying on as a consultant to help the authority move through the process of hiring a new director and getting the new director on, on steady and solid footing, as it were. The authority has put out a job description, and they're asking that resumes be sent in by October 6th. So they are moving quickly on this endeavor to find a new director. But yes, Mr. Schmidt has decided to retire, and I think at some point, as a board, as a township, we should acknowledge and recognize his 30 years. Is it 30 or more?
I'm sure. Probably.
Years of service as director of the Joint Sewage Authority, so. But that is the news from the sewer authority. The director has decided to retire. And they're looking for a new head of the authority, so. And I believe their job description and requirements are all posted on their site, so. All right,
Thank you. Any other board comments?
I do just want to mention that we, Mrs. Jones and I had attended the ceremony over at the Central Bucks Regional Police Department, where officers Zelinski and Gonzalez were given a commendation. Just make that right word out there, for their actions in assisting Central Bucks Regional Police Department with a situation that occurred down at Hartzell's Village. And I would like to hear more about what our police are doing, but I think I can say I'm proud of them and they do a good job, and we are glad to have them. And we'd like to keep them in the building.
No, we like them out on the road.
Well,
Okay.
They're home in the building.
Anything else on our board comments? Okay, we'll move on to action items. We have motion for portable light agreement with PA Rush. Is there a motion
I'll make that motion.
to,
I will second.
Wait,
Oh,
what was the
oh,
motion
what was
for?
your motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the execution of a portable lights agreement with the PA Rush for West Branch Park per the attachments.
Thank you so
We'll
much. That's your
second.
motion. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Okay, motion for the purchase of materials for the refurbishment of North Branch basketball courts. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the
You go.
bid, the purchase of the basketball hoops for the North Branch refurbishment project per the attachment.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Does that include the?
Any discussion?
If I will, just to clarify what it is, and if the board has any questions, Ryan. Ryan sent a memo to the board outlaying that some of the expenses and things that we looked into this project might put us over that $35,000 within the budget for this year. What Ryan proposed is that we purchase the materials this year and then add into the budget so that they can plan in the spring to redo the courts and install those things as part of the 2024 budget. That way, going into the summer, we'll have, we can have a nice ribbon cutting for a new basketball court going into the summer, and hopefully everybody will get to enjoy it. I
Okay,
don't know if Ryan has anything else to add, but it's just to purchase those materials.
all right, we have motion and second. All those in favor of approving, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next, we are considering awarding the 2023-2024 Bucks County Consortium salt bid.
I approve that motion to award the 2023-2024 Bucks County Consortium salt bid to Sylvie Concrete Products as per the attachments.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion?
I do have a question.
Mhm.
You did make note that this is their first time that they've won the bid. So they've won the bid for all of the municipalities that were in the consortium. Have we heard anything about them? No?
Their references, I looked them up, their references are like Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. They do a lot with the state of New Jersey and their
Okay.
roadways, so. I guess it's up for, we'll wait and see.
But there are other this was the lowest bid,
They were a little bit, yeah.
but are other municipalities allowed to go with a higher bid, or are they locked into this rate? I mean, are we the only ones hanging out there, or somebody else out there with us?
No, everybody else.
Oh, okay,
All municipalities have to take the lowest bid. So that's why I was asking.
If you're lucky, you won't have to use any salt this winter.
That is, do we have any?
Like that,
Okay.
Jeff. Thank you.
I think we have a supply from last year, don't we?
I was gonna say, how much do we have in reserve, Ryan?
We probably have 650 ton in stock from last year. I mean, we're fully stocked, so.
So we may or may not have to use them.
Well, you could get from your mouth.
Saying that's gonna happen. I was gonna say.
I would like to know, sorry, I'm one.
Yours, yours.
Yeah,
Thank you, Greg.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please, signify by saying aye.
Ay, ay, ay.
All right, we have,
come on, guys, they all like snow.
considering the hiring of Stephen Saunders, part-time police service clerk, position effective September 25th. Is there a motion?
I will make the motion to approve the hiring of Stephen Saunders, part-time police services clerk.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like a definition of part-time.
Part-time is no more than 30 hours.
And how many hours do you tend to hire this person for?
29 and a half.
Yeah. Initially, there might be more because of getting in training. We're starting to work with our accreditation consultants on preparing for accreditation, and this person is going to manage that for us.
Okay,
So there'll be some training for that and getting them up to speed on things and getting that process started. So therefore, I see initially that it could be up to 30 hours. But we were looking at probably somewhere around 25 hours a week. You know, is 4 or 5 hours a day for the 5 days now. The admin assistant, if she's off, then we plan on having him come in so that we do have someone to assist with making sure the public gets served if they come to the station.
okay.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item is consider making a donation to Lenape Tribe for their assistance with the 300.
I make a motion to approve that the board make a donation of $750 to Lenape Tribe, Lenape Tribe for their
Lenape.
support and participation in the 300th anniversary display at the Fall Festival for the attachment.
For a second,
I second that.
further discussion. All in favor of approving, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, public comment. During public comment.
It's only one pub. Oh,
Yeah, sorry, I just had to get to my notes. So my question was just towards the.
Name it out.
Say your name again, just for the 1 minute.
For
Thank you.
line Lexington. When we were talking about the plans, it was really extensive. It looks like it's really needed for the township. So I'd like the board to consider when they're speaking with the, I don't know the individual's name, who is here, who's been contracted to pull up the plans. That's since it is such a significant investment, in the past, I've seen certain buildings go up. And we want to make sure that we are looking towards the future, that this isn't a Band-Aid patch, that they're definitely doing things and hiring the right contractors with the right accreditations, so that way it's done the right way the first time, and 15 years from now, we're not spending another 5 or 6 million.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, under announcements, there will be an exec session after this meeting to discuss personnel. No actions will be taken at that point. So, and then the meeting of the next board of supervisors will take place on Monday, September 25th at 7 p.m. In the Township Building, meeting material website before the meeting date. You can see them at the listed WW site. And any other things, or is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Sure, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Caramba. Got it for you, Mike.
Thank you.